Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Rausch. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRauschMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. Today we're discussing Mank 2020, an American biographical drama film about screenwriter Herman J. Mankiewicz and his development of the screenplay of Citizen Kane, one of the most notorious movies produced in 1941 alongside Orson Welles. This movie is directed by David Fincher based on the screenplay by his late father, Jack Fincher, which is crazy because this guy has been passed away since, I think, 2003, and it feels like this movie was written almost this year. It stars Gary Oldman, Amanda Seyfried, Lily Collins, Eris Howard, Tom Pelphrey, among many other notable names, alongside Charles Dance. David Fincher's father, Jack Fincher, wrote the script in the 1990s. David originally intended to film it after he had completed The Game in 1997. Kevin Spacey and Jodie Foster were going to be the leads, but it never came to fruition. His father, Jack Fincher, the writer of this movie, died in 2003. The project was officially greenlit in July 2019 and completed between November 2019 and February 2020. It was actually filmed fairly quickly, to be honest. So it did have a limited theatrical release. I didn't actually realize that. I thought it was only going to be on on streaming services, which would have kind of made this a little bit revolutionary, talking about the screenwriter of one of the most notorious movies of all time. So let me just rewind real quick with saying all of that. There is a lot of history that goes into this movie and a lot of history that goes into Hollywood. Now, how much interest the average viewer has in it can vary, depending on if you were quote unquote like a critic or quote unquote if you're just a regular individual who's just watching watch a movie because you like movies. Someone that's not necessarily a fanatic but might know of the films. There's different subsections of what movie watchers, their backgrounds, how, the types of movie watchers that come from. So this movie is specifically for movie watchers that, one, love movies, two, are kind of obsessed with the history in a way, and three, really care about, not only filmography history, but obviously how filmography is reflected in real life. And kind of without going into too much detail, this movie is a behind the scenes of the behind the scenes of the movie Citizen Kane. And so, just so that everyone understands what this movie's all about, it's essentially a movie that is made in the same style as Citizen Kane. And Citizen Kane was already a non-linear screenplay that was written by Herman Mankiewicz. This movie is loosely about how Herman Mankiewicz came to fruition of William Randolph Hearst, I think his name was, and basically the characters he came up with in Citizen Kane and how he was influenced by it. But ultimately, this movie, so there's two separate things. There's what I thought this movie was going to be about, and then what this movie ended up being about. The movie, what I thought I was going into was going to be behind the scenes of the writer of Citizen Kane and how he came to, the thoughts of reasoning of why he wrote Citizen Kane. How did he come up with this amazing script? How did he come up with the characters? How did all of this come to fruition? And yes, that is a chunk of the movie, but that's not really even the main section of the movie. Like, among this being a wonderfully produced, edited, the editing in this might be subject to vary, but I'd say overall, from a technical level, this is a very impressive movie. But when it comes down to giving us the full life of this character, Herman J. Mankiewicz, played by Gary Oldman, I feel like it's a little lackluster. It's jumps around in the story in a way that feels, what I heard David Chen say on the Slash Filmcast, it feels unfocused. And I couldn't think of the word that this movie felt like. And it absolutely nailed it on the head when I heard that this movie sounds and feels unfocused. It really does feel unfocused. The non-linear structure makes this movie a lot more difficult to grasp emotionally, and for me personally, because we're jumping all over the timeline. Half the time, Mankiewicz is suffering from, I think he was in I think it's like a car wreck or something at one point, and so he's writing a ton of this stuff. Sitting down, laying down. I think I counted about 6 times that we had shown him laying down in the bed, trying to recover during this. So I was like, how are they going to make this like interesting at all when I was watching the first 30 minutes of this? And it turns out, for me personally, it's strictly a technical work of art, and it's not really for me when it comes down to the story. Like, I consider myself someone that loves movies, but I'm not going down the history lane of everything movies. I can't recite all of the famous actors and directors and producers and everyone behind the scenes from 1919 all the way to 2020. It's just not realistic for me at this time. Maybe in the near future I will be. But as of right now, watching this movie, it I I'm just gonna say I was straight up bored. Like, for the pros that it has, some amazing acting, some amazing performances, and some amazing uh, scenes. I will say there are amazing scenes in this that might be worth just your time watching the entire thing. But this is 2 hours and over 2 hours and like 10 minutes or something like that, and it is just it's I don't know how much better to describe it, but it's lengthy and it feels drawn out in ways that it doesn't need to be. Um, Let me hop into spoilers here in a second, but overall, I will say I wasn't crazy about this movie. I was looking for more of a, uh, how was this guy influenced, and I didn't really feel like I saw how this guy was influenced. It really talks about how he's more of an alcoholic in ways, and how he's an amazing writer when he's drunk, but when he's not, he's a different person kind of thing, and how addiction and alcoholism can and impact how you are as a person. And there's a lot of like deep stuff that's going on, but it's a movie that doesn't want to hold your hand. So if you miss something, if you miss a name, if you miss what's going on, it's like they're not going to go back and repeat what's going on. They might just fade out to the next scene, unfortunately. And I'm just like, oh my Lanta. So yeah, this movie, the pacing is completely affected because of the editing. I mean, they'll stop the scene so they can fade to black, and then fade into another scene, and then come back and revisit the scene before. It just the editing in it is just not my style, and it made it very difficult to latch onto this. So music by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. These guys have gone pretty far. Although I wasn't crazy about the music in this. For some reason I just didn't feel like the music led to the feeling of being rushed, and I felt like this movie was trying to say, yo, he only has 60 days to do this, and he is not doing it. He is not writing this really important script. You need to push this guy. So I felt like a combination of mixed feelings, trying to understand what was going on with this. Now, the cinematography by Eric Meiserschmidt. He was the cinematographer for Yeah, he's been the cinematographer for Fincher for a while. Gone Girl, Mindhunter. He did. He shot some episodes of Legion. Okay. Fargo. Okay. The TV show. All right, let's hop into the plot real quick so that we can kind of cover what's going on this 20 to looks like a $25 million budget. And of course, it's limited release because of Netflix, so they didn't make hardly anything. Um, I'm saying 100,000 plus COVID times, can't make shit. Movie theaters aren't even open. Yeah, and edited by Kurt Baxter. I'm curious what else this guy has done. I'm sure this was just okay. So he did Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Social Network, Girl Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl, and now he's done Mank. Okay, so he's worked with Fincher for a while, and I like those other movies. I think they're a lot more. I think all of these movies are better with editing than Mank is, unfortunately. Let's see though. And of course, this is just me. A lot of people are gonna look at this and be like, "How are you looking at this?" and saying all this stuff. Well, it's like I can only review it off of the first time I saw it. In my opinion, it's like I can go back and watch it a few more times, and I'll give it maybe a different rating. But I don't think it's going to improve much more upon this first time because I was just like, this is. I had to sit down and watch it almost It took 2 or 3 sits to sit down and complete the entire thing. So it's just like I um I was ready for it to leave. I was ready for it to get off its high horse of this, thinking that I really cared about this guy, and I do for an extent, but I don't feel like it hooked me in a way. So that's my ultimate problem. It didn't give me a proper hook. So let's talk about the plot real quick. Here are spoilers. Also, yeah, if you are a Patreon member, then you'll be able to listen to the spoiler section. This is where we are going to drop off everyone that is a non Patreon member. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Have all your questions, comments, concerns in the comment section below, or wherever you are listening to this. Send me an email, luckydogpodcast@gmail.com. And for everyone else, we are joining the Patreon section. We are going to talk about the plot and a little bit more of Mank.